Hello everybody, I'm Sarah.
I'm Emily.
And we are Recorder Players.
Recorder
Players. On Zoom. Welcome back to Team Recorder. Today I'm going to be helping you with the question, how to sound medieval when you're playing your recorder. This is actually going to be the start of a series where I go through different periods of musical history and help you to get into that style with the help of my professional colleagues. By the way, this video is sponsored by Primephonic, a high quality classical music streaming service. I've put together a special medieval playlist to go with this video, link in the description, along with a code that you can use to get 2 months for free on me. So more about that later. How to sound medieval. The thing is, medieval music covers, you could say, 1,000 years of history, and of course it varied a lot where you're talking geographically. Although we know that music was an important feature during this period, not a great deal of sources have survived that explain how you actually play it. We've seen pictures of recorders, but there's no writing saying do this, do that. So how do you actually know what to play? I've teamed up with a good friend and colleague of mine, Emily Askew, who I've talked about on Team Recorder before. Emily is a recorder player as well as playing bagpipes, shawm, viol, singing, all kinds of medieval instruments. And she's also a folk musician. Without further ado, Emily!
So I'm Emily Askew and I play a lot of folk music and early music as well. I've always sort of learnt both of them alongside each other throughout my whole career. I was the daughter of 2 Morris dancers, so I got taken around lots and lots of folk festivals. And then I started playing the recorder at the age of 4, so I've always been quite into early music from an early age. Mm-hmm. And I studied early music at music college, and sort of after that, I've performed in various different early music ensembles and folk duos and groups as well.
Fantastic. I've seen a quote from you that I really like, which is that the further back you go, the closer medieval music and folk music are.
Mm-hmm. So I think if we look back at a lot of the instrumental music from medieval times, actually even the songs as well, we just have these single line melodies, which we have for most sort of folk songs, folk tunes. They don't come with a pre-existing arrangement. So there's not as much written about the detail of style and arrangement from back in the medieval times. So we tend to look at existing folk traditions, those sort of unbroken oral traditions, to influence my interpretation of medieval music. So the hope is that the way that the folk music is played now, there are some elements that were around in those medieval times. And with certain sources as well, for example, the Llibre Vermell that has survived, that's a book that's in the monastery of Montserrat from the end of the 14th century. And it's brilliant. It's got 10 amazing songs, and it comes with this inscription at the beginning, which says that the church wasn't that pleased with the pilgrims singing their own sort of inappropriate songs, which I'm taking as being the more sort of folky songs, in the outside the monastery there. So these new songs were compiled so there was something more appropriate to sing, and it's thought that they took some of the existing folk song melodies that were being sung and changed the words to make them more religious and appropriate, but you still retained those the dance-like qualities around dances in some of them. So there's lots of insights, even though a lot of the music that has survived was written down by the church or more of the aristocracy. We can get these little insights into what the more working class people were maybe singing or playing at that time.
That's fascinating, because when you read about medieval music, it's often saying, well, the surviving music is sacred and it was written down by the monks, and the secular music, we don't know anything. But actually there is this surviving folk tradition that has continued. Ooh.
Definitely.
How do you approach a piece of medieval music? How do you know what to do?
Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, there's not a lot written to indicate exactly how it was performed, and especially if we're looking at the recorder as well, there's no treatise saying the recorder play it in this way. So I feel that lends itself more to stylistic creativity without people being able to say no, didn't do that. So, and with the notation being quite basic, sometimes it's not really clear what rhythms they used. So again, that opens up a number of possibilities in your interpretation. But looking at folk music in these unbroken traditions, I highly influence the way that I play it. Well, I guess if we're looking at something like the Cantigas de Santa Maria, these kind of 420 songs that were compiled by Alfonso X in northern Iberia. And if we look at the pictures, the iconography that have survived with that, and we see pictures of Christian, Jewish and Moorish musicians. So we know that there were these influences from different cultures when writing these pieces. It's great to then look at the history of who might have been around then, and then look at what we can take from that style of music that is around now, and to think, maybe some Arabic ornaments would work really well with this piece. And actually you can see within some of the written melodies, it's like, that almost looks like a written out ornament that's used now. Back. Yeah, that's it. But I think what's important is that balance between, you don't want to worry too much about being historically informed, because it's still a piece of music that you are putting your creative stamp as a musician on. And I went to this EAC summer school where John Dipper was teaching, and he gave me a quote, which was, "Are we worshipping the ashes, or are we keeping the flames alive?" So I like to respect the history, but I also want to have fun with the music and keep it alive now. And that's something that I've done with various bands, and that recent album Alchemy with the Emily Askew band, I put it with we looked at more modern instruments and what we could do, mixing them with early instruments and electronics and that sort of thing, which was a different interpretation to what I've ever done before. So it's just quite nice to play about with it.
yeah I love that quote there about the ashes and the flames. That's really really nice. Are there any big no-nos?
I think it's all up to your own taste. I like to retain a certain amount of what's written there, but there's nothing to say that you can't change the odd ending. And actually, in the medieval times, they were taking snippets of material and changing things with their contrafactum and changing the words, and you're seeing this slight variation. I mean, some of these SMPs are almost like written out improvisations,
right?
So you can just you can see how they were changing the music at the time. So it's up to you.
Yeah, you have to wonder how many different versions of these dances and these melodies existed out of all the ones that there was one written down, but maybe there was 1,000 other versions.
Absolutely, and particularly if in a lot of places it was being transferred orally.
In terms of the recorder specifically, you've got a piece of music and you're going to play it on the recorder. What are your favourite tips to make it sound medieval? For example, the sound or ornaments?
So I really like using my fingers to articulate more than my tongue. Okay. So if you think about some of the instruments that were popular back then, like the bagpipes and the hurdy-gurdy, and they all have this continuous sound. So they have to use their fingers to articulate, especially if they're doing the same note twice. Some people think that the medieval bowed instruments like the viels, instead of using a different bow for each note, just played with long bows and mainly sort of slurred or used finger articulation. And I think that just works really well on the recorder, whether or not they did.
Yeah.
So you've got that sort of bagpipe flick, I like to call it, which you can use just before you play a note. So that sort of thing. So in slow motion, you can pick any of these higher fingers that you're not using, just flicking up and down.
Okay. And you would use that instead of the tongue?
Yes. So it's almost like you are slurring it all. I mean, slurs just gives it a slightly different feel to it.
Nice. And would you use that on every note, or to emphasize important notes or the rhythm?
Not on every note. I would use it for specific notes I really want to emphasize, but I would use for several in a row as well. It's a nice effect to use on a scale. Also, I think it influences what is easier on your instrument as well.
Yeah.
So obviously doing those bottom notes, really easy to flick any of those top ones, but when you're getting that sort of thing, you might start using your thumb, and some of those work faster than others. Yeah. In an easy way.
So you'd find the fingers that you'd find the ones that fall under the fingers naturally.
Yeah, initially, yeah. And if there's somewhere else that I really want to decorate, then I would. I guess it's that other thing of looking at how I play the same melody on different instruments, and you work out what is just really easy and really natural, whether that's on the bagpipes, viol, or whatever. And then sometimes go back to the recorder and think, well, how can I make that sound like the way I played it on the viol? Because that was easy on the viol, but it's not on the recorder. But that's not to say I can't do it. A lot of these ornaments you see in different genres, but they just use different names or even different folk traditions. You know, you've got your Irish cuts and crans, and then you might call them a mordant somewhere else, or a turn and trills. But if I just go through a couple of those more trill ones, say you can use a trill from the notes going down below or going up, or then using the more baroque version of trilling from above or from below. So this is a Cantiga 100. See if I can put them all into it.
Beautiful. For example, with trills, and we'll see this later in the series with the baroque, there's this really stylistic, like you start from the note above, you start on this beat. It's all almost rules, but here it's a wider interpretation, different shapes and different directions.
Absolutely, yeah, because there's nothing specifically written down, then you've got that artistic license more, I guess.
So after ornaments, what about the sound? Like, for example, should you be using vibrato?
Yeah, I think the sound that I like to use some vibrato, but as an ornament rather than something that I use all the time. I think if you're thinking of singing, that sort of decoration, that wobbling of the voice is very natural. I mean, babies and toddlers do it. So I think my one certainly does. So I think it must have been creatively explored by some people in the medieval times. So I don't think we can definitely say, no, they didn't use it at all. And I like using the more finger vibrato, which has been influenced by my bagpipe playing again. But I think it's interesting to, whatever vibrato, whether that's voice or finger vibrato to vary the speed and the amount of it to shape your note. So it's not just like, I've just got my one speed and amount, but with my VL, I play a lot of double strings at the same time. Some people think that those medieval bowed VLs had flat bridges, so you didn't have the capacity to play single notes. And you're thinking, how did you do that on the recorder? So you can have fun. You can have fun with your sort of vocal drones at the same time as playing. I don't think I could do this with headphones on. That sort of thing.
There are medieval, am I right? Are there medieval double recorders?
But yes, you can get those double recorders, and experimenting with with unisons and thirds and fifths. I mean, if you're looking at harmonies, then they tended to think of sort of consonances and dissonances. So your consonances for a lot of European medieval music were sort of unisons, octaves, and fifths. And then, but if you look into medieval English music and Scottish as well, then they tended to use thirds as well as consonances. And we know this because lots of two-part pieces have survived, particularly the two-part vocal pieces known as gimels, and they seem to move in and out of thirds. So that's another influence that we can into use. Your arrangement.
Yeah, because in my research I was reading that there's this whole modern idea of harmony that we have now of chords and then the chords and then the melody on top. It was completely different then, but it was rather about moving from consonances where the notes fit to dissonances where they clash and back again.
Definitely. It was so in a lot of these two-part pieces that have survived, it's not like this is the melody and this is the accompaniment. It's like these are equal pieces that are just equal parts that just sort of flow in and out of each other.
Yeah.
And there are some songs that have survived that have different words for the top part and the bottom part at the same time as well.
Really?
So it is almost like two completely different songs that
wow,
intertwining.
Oh, fascinating. That's cool.
Yeah.
You've got a piece of medieval music and you want to make an arrangement because you can play it from beginning to end, but what if you want to make some harmony or make it a bit more interesting? Where do you start?
So I like to start with drones, start off experimenting. So a very easy and effective arrangement technique is just keeping that same note going through underneath what you perceive as being the keynote. So a lot of these medieval pieces are not in major and minor scales, they're in modes. But I would just experiment by ear and see which you think, because you've got a lot of those instruments like the bagpipes that had that initial key drone, particularly when the drone came in. That's why a lot of the melodies lend themselves really well to that arrangement idea. And that's not to say you just have to play it as a long note as well. You can experiment with so many different rhythms as a starting point. Yes.
Right, okay. So if you had a guitar or something, you could play that one note, but then
that's it. And I really like to look at if we're going back to sort of percussion and that sort of thing, Arabic percussion, amazing rhythms that work so well underneath. And just because you're not playing a percussion instrument doesn't mean to say you can't use those rhythms in your accompaniment of a piece.
When I think of medieval music, I instinctively do this like drone, like duh, and then this step down, like duh, 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 duh.
Yes.
Is that actually accurate in anywhere, or is that just one of these tropes that always gets used?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I wonder whether some of it does come from chant, because I don't know so much about that, but you tend that to me that sounds like chanting and sort of Gregorian chant. They don't move, they're not jumping around so much. Oh, and I guess the other thing is that a contrary motion of accompaniments.
Okay.
So yeah, starting together, one going high, one going lower, and you can see some of that. There are a few rounds, going back to the Llibre Vermell because it's my favourite. So there's a round that has only sort of like equivalent of 3 bars, and it goes da 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 da. So when you've got that together, that contrary motion is coming out. Yeah. And that to me sounds really medieval as an accompaniment. So I think there are little snippets of information out there that suggests that was a technique that was used. And I think for our modern ears, hearing that sort of accompaniment does make people think, oh, medieval. Like organum as well, like just singing in fifths and fourths. That sounds medieval to the modern ear.
So theoretically you could get a simple tune, and harmonise it with a drone, or try moving in the opposite direction to the melody, or in parallel fifths, and they would be some starting points. And could you even combine them? Would that be too much?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess, and then also if you're doing the more English music, you can put in the thirds there. Another technique you could use is sort of like ghosting the tune. So you're playing bits of the original melody, but every now and then you might just hold on a note a bit longer or go a note higher instead. And it's something that works really well when accompanying singers. But that's not to say you can't use it in an instrumental way as well.
I see. So it's almost like you're playing the same melody but not, then you make these little changes.
Or just creating harmonies which are going in and out of these perceived consonances. So you might mainly focus on the fifth, but then have a few passing notes going slightly up, slightly down, causing that dissonance and that sort of push forward in the music. And then it's like, we've gone, it's all resolved with a nice consonance.
Would you like to introduce your course and just tell people how they can find you and how they can join and what they do?
Yes. So I'm running a course, The Beginner's Guide to Medieval Music, on Saturday afternoons. And we are looking at different repertoire from a variety of countries, looking at ornamentation, arrangement techniques, and also delving into the history and what survives that can indicate to us how medieval music was played.
Is it only for recorder players or for any instrument?
No, it's for all instruments of all abilities as well. You don't need to have played any medieval music before. And the pieces that we are working on, I will teach orally as well as provide the notation for. So if you only learn one particular way, it will be covered with both.
There is so much more to say about medieval music. The most important thing when getting into a style of music is to listen, listen, listen. To this end, I have teamed up again with Primephonic, going over here so I can show you some bits of it. Primephonic are a high quality classical music audio streaming service with a huge catalogue that's always being updated. It's really designed around classical music, so you can easily find the music you want. No more typing in the thing you think you want to listen to and you just get 2,000 tracks entitled Allegro. As well as a huge catalogue, there are articles, specially curated playlists, so much interesting stuff to help you get into genres of music. So it's not only for the classical music aficionados who are already listening to a lot, it's for people who are new to the style and want to find out more. And they give you loads of helping hands in getting into this music. Just looking at the page now, you can browse by musical period, genre, composer, conductor, orchestra, soloist, ensembles or choirs. So no matter what you want to listen to, there's a clear way in. And once you're in there, a lot more to discover. On my profile, I made you a playlist of medieval music. I spent many happy hours going through their substantial medieval catalogue and picking out a bunch of my favourites. Now, it's very varied. There's quite a lot of recorder in there, and I've also included some non-recorder pieces because I think it's really interesting to hear how different instruments, singers, arrangers approach medieval music. Some of these will be very traditional, they'll be very faithful to historical performance practice. Some of these are a bit more out there and have a more, shall we say, modern interpretation. There might be synthesizers, but it's all music I think is really beautiful. On each of these tracks, if you like it, you can click through to listen to the whole album. You can then see what else those artists have done. You can see what else those composers have done. So it's a really easy way to get into this style. There is so much to discover, and if you are excited by this, you can use my code Sarah21 to get 2 months completely free. So head down to my playlist, give all of that gorgeous medieval music a listen, and don't forget to use my code. Enjoy! Let's wrap this up, shall we? Because it's actually getting dark outside. I've been talking for so long. As always, you can subscribe to my channel by clicking on my face down here. Over here is the Team Recorder Patreon, where you can choose to support the channel. And up here is my introduction to medieval music, where we get into a lot of different aspects. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye!